Good morning, everyone. My name is Robert Schmid, Deloitte Digital's Chief IoT Technologist, or also known as Mr. IoT. This week on Coffee with Mr. IoT, my co-host Rachel Mohrmann and I are talking with Andy Daecher, the Chief IoT Executive, and we're going to talk about industrial IoT. Good morning, Andy. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Doing great. Thanks, Robert. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So, Andy, I'm going to ask you about your fabulous pictures later, but let's just talk a little bit of business. Industrial IoT, you and I, we co-lead the practice here that we founded last year, and we often present together. And one of the things I always enjoy is we have different views on stuff, and one of the things I hear you say a lot is that really the action is all in industrial IoT. What do you mean by that? Oh, thank you. You have coffee, by the way. This is awesome. I totally missed out.
It is coffee with Mr. IoT, right?
It is. It is.
You're paying for this.
Yes, we are paying for this, Andy. So, Andy, what is industrial IoT?
Yeah. So I as you know, Robert, we've been really trying to take a vertical approach as we think about IoT, because IoT is such a broad term, and trying to narrow it down to how companies actually get value out of it and really can leverage technology to transform their businesses. And so we've been engaging with our industry practices, and I see the most activity in what I would call kind of heavy industry, and it's manufacturing, aerospace and defense, automotive, industrial products, chemical manufacturing, and I think there's a few reasons for that. There's a fear factor, right? There's been so much progress in things like autonomous vehicles so quickly that I think most of these large, heavy manufacturers can kind of see the analog of this advanced technology creeping into their business in ways that it hasn't done before. So, the automotive companies have moved very, very quickly to try and incorporate autonomous driving and connected vehicle features into their cars, but you can see that as it ripples out to construction equipment and HVAC and other just large industrial kind of companies, they can all very quickly kind of say, well, gosh, maybe I can see that's going to start creeping into my business too, and I better do something. And so I think there's a bit of a fear factor that's driving it. People can see a little bit down the line in terms of what could happen in their business, and they're trying to get ahead of the curve. And companies like General Electric have really been driving the agenda. General Electric, very much an old line manufacturing company, has decided to create a software business really focused around the industrial internet and all the data created by outfitting their products, their complex products, jet engines and turbines and so forth, with sensors, and then deriving value out of that by, generally in their case, it's understanding the health of those assets and then translating that into a more effective field service program, and then even further, really changing the way that they offer their business and offering their products more by the hour or charging for uptime rather than for the product itself. So anyway,
you mentioned that it started in automotive and it's kind of like trickling down. Is there any industries that it's trickling down to that might be more surprising, or that it hasn't gotten to and you're surprised that it isn't infiltrating? So you mentioned the competitive need in automotive, but is there other industries where it's going that are surprising, or ones that it should be and it's not?
I think the further away you get from, I think in my mind it's funny. I think some even automotive companies are grappling with this in different ways, right? I think we've done a lot of research as a firm around the future of mobility and have this a view as to where this is all headed, But I don't think every automotive company has even fully got their head around what they think it means to them. So they're so even some of the automotive companies, I think, are very uneven in the way that they're embracing and trying to understand what the strategy means to them. There's, I think varying levels of belief around how far autonomous drive will go, and whether consumers are really ready to to give up full control of their vehicles, and all the associated, so if you look at autonomous features along one side, and we have this 2x2 that shows the sharing economy on the other. So in the lower left is where we are today, which is we own all of our vehicles, so we don't share, and the vehicle, we drive the vehicle. Then in the upper right is a fully shared economy where nobody owns any vehicle, and the vehicles are fully autonomous. So where on the spectrum you place your bets is going to drive your strategy. And I do believe that we're headed to the upper right, and it's probably coming a lot faster and sooner. But even I think most automotive companies are not quite sure how to approach that and what it means to them. So I guess I don't know that I have the broadest view. I think the companies that have to do something are doing something, but it's really that sort of in my mind driving progress more than really trying to create the future themselves. And so we see a lot of smaller companies starting to come up that are doing new things and trying to change industries where old, more established companies are trying to obviously preserve what they have.
If you're just joining us, I'm Robert Schmid, Deloitte Digital's Chief IoT Technologist, and you're watching Coffee with Mr. IoT. Today, Rachel and I have Andy Daecher with us. We're talking about industrial IoT. Andy, you talked about people doing this out of fear, but it's interesting to me, whenever I think of fear, I think of potential of losing market share or cost savings, right? Which, with preventive maintenance being an example of where you use sensors to predict when something might fail, you reduce cost. But we've also seen examples around logistic companies that actually use the data they generate with sensors to create new services and have additional revenue. Any other thoughts on industrial IoT where it actually is more of an offensive play rather than a defensive play, where they have great ideas? I've seen some wind turbine stuff. I've seen a variety of different interesting examples, and it'd be great. I don't know. I'd just love to hear some thoughts from you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a lot of companies. So there's a very well-known example of Michelin, a tire company, that has embedded sensors in their tires, and they're gathering data about the usage of their tires, largely in commercial vehicles, that they are then trying to sell and monetize that data to various other companies that are interested in learning about how cars get driven and usage patterns and so forth. So the data, and that's something I think we talk a lot about, is the value of IoT is really in the information in the data itself, and what you do with it. And so I think I see a lot of companies trying to change their business or enhance their business in ways by leveraging that data. But it's interesting to me. It is an evolution for most companies, that if you start by thinking, hey, we're gonna create this new business and change the world, it's harder to make progress. And then what if it doesn't work out, and then you have to start over? I think, in my mind, starting with thinking about it as what data would be useful to us. What if we today knew more about how our customers were using our commercial HVAC systems in different geographies, and could that really influence how we design our products for the Southeast versus the Northwest versus the Northeast of the United States? And thinking about it that way, sort of in making incremental progress and getting incremental value, and then over time really uncovering the opportunities that come along with that. So once you get comfortable, hey, we're gathering a lot of this data, we're learning things about our products and our customers and our operations in ways that we didn't, we hadn't really had access to before. But then using that as a way to sort of change your business, rather than thinking you have to start with some crazy new idea that may or may not pan out initially.
I think that's interesting because we talked last week with two of our solution architects. Sorry, Robert, you and I are always so excited to talk. So we talked with two of our solution architects last week, and they mentioned this kind of similar thought process, Andy, which is making sure you know what the use case is before you jump in, and making sure that the platform and all the tech stack supports that. And I think if I listen to what you just said, start with something realistic, tangible, build it right, and then go and expand from there so you can take on the world later, but really try to get that pilot or that smaller concept or product solidified first before trying to expand.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Robert has, I'm sure you've used this phrase on this very forum before, but the idea of thinking big but starting small, and start with something that and that you can make progress on, and going from there, I think is good advice.
It's my pet peeve, Andy. There isn't 1 hour that doesn't go by without me saying think big, start small, scale fast. But, I make fun of it by saying it often. I really mean it. And, I just had a conversation yesterday with a CIO at a large oil company, and, he says that we have a lot of ideas, but we haven't put any of them into real use. And that's where it gets to, right? I mean, if you don't start small, you're not going to learn, and you're not going to move forward, which is exactly what you talked about, right? Don't take the biggest idea. Take one idea and actually do it and learn from that. Learn what your customers do, so absolutely. So, Andy, I have to go back to the self-driving car one more time, but have you ever driven in the self-driving Tesla? That's the one that's out there?
I haven't yet. No. Although one of our colleagues has posted videos on YouTube.
What were the videos like?
He's juggling, isn't he?
Well, I think the one I've seen is where he's got 2 cups of coffee and saying, "Look, 2 cups of coffee, one in each hand."
Yeah, one of these days, I'm gonna have to have Mike Brink on one of those calls, because there's just too many videos of him that we need to show here. So.
Well, I think that's an opportunity for a next guest, a guest live from the self-driving car. Let's see if he can, doesn't need to drive, so he can just tape himself the whole way. We'll interview him on the road. It sounds really safe, right?
So, Andy, you talked about this grid, right, that we have in mobility, where you have shared economy on one side and fully autonomous on the other side. I almost wonder, what would that grid look like for IoT? The thing I like about the grid is it talks about that you take it from $1 for a mile, you take it down to 30 cents if you do both. I almost wonder, how can we do a grid like this for IoT? Because I really think that shows the most, where you're going, like, maybe on one side you do sensors, and then on the other side you do fully standardized or something like this. I mean, I really think, what do you think is on the grid for us? For Internet of Things.
Good question.
I think like anything, it's probably use case dependent. But I do think there is I think in all the things we're doing, Robert, there's sort of this degree of autonomy, right? That as you and I have talked about, there's the autonomous vehicle is a lot of the intelligence and the processing is in that car, right? And so for a car to drive itself, it's got to be a very sophisticated set of processors, and a lot of the data is happening. Analysis is happening at the edge, and I see that in all of our in all of our use cases. There's sort of a degree of from very simple sensors that are just detecting environmental conditions or something like that, to much more sophisticated. And you think about a manufacturing control environment that you and I have worked in various scenarios, but there are some where those manufacturing shop floors can start to control themselves rather than just providing data that then a human has to go, intervene and react to. You can get to situations where a machine knows to turn itself off at a certain time, or even to go through some sort of routine maintenance kind of mode if it reaches certain thresholds and conditions. So I think that degree of autonomy, I don't know if the sharing kind of makes sense, but I think that there's probably different metrics for different use cases that could go on the vertical axis.
So you touched on something else earlier, Andy. You talked about, I think it was with the tire scenario, the use case, about the monetization of data. Do we see this, especially for, you mentioned some older blue chip companies, GE, for example. Do we see this as a new business, or do we see this as old business retransforming and coming into a new market? How do you see the data changing the way that we see the industry today? Is it new companies, or is it old guys changing the way they do business?
I think I don't know. We'll see, I guess. I've been fairly close to GE, and at least for now, what they're still primarily a manufacturer, right? They still are. Their core competency is going to be in the complex equipment that they manufacture in oil and gas and power and transportation and so forth. And their play is really more of they're trying to create a platform that other industrial companies can use. They, at least today, they're not really thinking about taking the data and monetizing it. They want to enable companies to do that themselves. I do think, though, you look at back to the autonomous vehicle example, you look at companies like Google that are getting into that market, and there's rumors of Apple doing something similar, that if you believe that we're going to this autonomous shared state, there's certainly less differentiation of products in that state, I would think, right? There's probably some, but if you're buying a car as a service, you might buy a luxury car as a service, and so you're always guaranteed to have a very comfy, fancy ride coming to shuttle you around. But it's not going to be. There's not going to be as much product differentiation in that world, and you can see there's an opportunity for new companies that are the owners of the information about the maps and the conditions, and so Google has Waze, and so they are through a social network are gathering information about real-time traffic conditions. And I was in a forum with our auto industry guys, and we were talking about that. So if you're Ford, do you need to have your own technology platform like a Waze to gather? Or are you going to buy that from Google? And who's really the driver of that industry then? So I do think it could be new companies. I think it's going to be hard for companies, old line companies, to really completely rethink their business in a way that gets away from kind of their what they do they really excel at today.
Robert, you peaked up at Apple. What got you excited?
Well, I have to admit that if there is both an Apple and a Google car, I'm not sure what's going to win out. My vainness and having a really fashionable car, or my geekiness and really having a technically full advanced car. But Andy, let me shift topics. That made Rachel laugh. She tilted over. This is awesome. So Andy, let me shift topics for a second, if that's okay.
By the way, Mr. IoT is a Google guy, in case you didn't get that.
Yes, I am a Google guy. I even got Andy a Project 5 phone, in case you're wondering. We do hang out together a little more than you think. So in any case, so you are Mr. Google, though, Andy. You do know that, right? By the way of being the lead client partner for Google.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, Andy, I want to shift a little bit. One of the things you and I both always say when we talk is IoT is a family business or as a team sport, right? Whichever way you want to go. But you need an ecosystem of partners to do IoT today. My favorite sentence actually is, and I stole that from you, Andy. I love it. And I give you credit every time. There is RP for IoT. And so we have partnerships, and you talked about GE, and we have a partnership with GE Predix. Can you talk a little bit about what partnerships we have? Talk a little bit about the GE partnership. I'd love to hear your take on that, and I think it's super interesting for the people that listen.
And really, why is a partnership important? I mean, make sure we start with basics.
Yeah, we can start with that, Rachel. I think that's so as we've really gotten our feet wet and our hands dirty, whatever analogy you want to use, in IoT and really done implementation work, these are complex projects to deliver an end-to-end solution from a network of thousands of sensors through an edge device into the cloud in some form or fashion, and then onto a core enterprise application or analytics package, and back. Very, very complex projects, and so they require a number of components and a number of competencies, some of which we have and we are very, very good at, but some of which we don't. And so we've had to reach out and find partners to do things that we didn't necessarily have a lot of depth or critical mass or scale in, especially as it relates to
that business, Andy, do we?
What? I'm sorry, Robert?
Some of the stuff we don't even want to be in that business.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and so there's some that we will never really build that capability, and so we've really thought a lot about, as you create these solutions, what are those component pieces? Who are the various players that you want or need to partner with? And it does, as Robert said, it takes a village, and we've been working on our own ecosystem, and I obviously the position we want to be in is as an orchestrator of that ecosystem, where we know what works, and we can bring together a consortium of vendors and providers that we know will deliver. So you asked a little bit about who our core partners are, and in the at the center of that complex architecture, we do have these IoT platforms, which really are kind of about how do you gathering data in real time that's coming in from sensors, and then and some storing it in the right fashion, making some basic rules-based decisions about where that data goes, and in some cases maybe even doing some condition-based decision making, passing it on to an analytics platform, or even in some cases, some of these platforms have some basic analytics and machine learning capabilities built in. And some of them have basic applications that sort of run on top of the platform. So GE, for example, is very, very strong in asset management. So where they come from, as we talked about, is instrumenting their complex industrial products or assets, and so they've built an asset management piece of software on top of their Predix platform, and so in industrial settings, we think they've got a really well thought through, complete offering. It's still early days, and they're still developing it, but we like what we've seen, and we know that they're committed to it because we've been on the inside helping them kind of create this new business. But there are a number of other partners, and Robert and I have been very involved with a company called ThingWorx that is owned by PTC, and they probably have the most installed base of clients, of paying customers in this space. And then you go from there. There are literally dozens of platforms. There are a number of specialized analytics providers. So Ashish Verma, who is one of our practice leaders, is very, very invested in Cloudera, who is a cloud-based big data and analytics company. And then we also have one of the places where we've really needed to build out our ecosystem is on the edge in the device side. So we've hired a few people that understand that world, that have helped us figure out the engineering companies and semiconductor companies that we want to partner with. And so we've been working a lot with Arrow Electronics and Avnet. And one of the nice things about them is, for a particular application, they've got a catalog of sensors. They can very quickly get to, okay, here's the right kind of device that is required for a particular application, and how it they can help get it connected. They can help get it even manufactured in limited volumes for a proof of concept. And so that's an example of a kind of company that we really haven't had much interaction with before, but we're really working a lot more closely with in IoT.
That's great. So I'm looking at the time, Robert, and I got a little nervous because I forgot what you're going to ask, as you do in every. I've got mine too. We're flip-flop buddies today. I thought you were going to give me crap for not ever having heels on. I'm like a home office slum today.
I have to take my shoes off?
You got to show us what you're wearing.
It's a
I'm wearing.
Started actually. Look at you, very fashionable.
Wow, those are fancy. So Robert, I think I'm going to steal your thunder one more time. If you were to ask me, kind of what I got out of today, I think there's two things that Andy really said that hit home. One is, obviously starting small, but really what that means is picking a meaningful use case that you can wrap your head around, that you can wrap your tech stack around, and then going in and expanding out, whether that's with monetizing data, whether that's taking over the world, but really figuring out, start small and then grow through those other channels to take on the other opportunities. And then the other thing that was interesting, I think, that we got to dive into today is the whole partner landscape of not just thinking of it from a platform, but sensors, platform, analytics, integrator, and how we all have to kind of come together to really make this happen, because otherwise it's too complex and no one can do it alone. So sorry for stealing your thunder, but I had to get that out.
You do great, Rachel. I love doing this with you. I think the thing, too, is, and you talk about the partners, but I want to come back to this, that some people don't want to be in that business. We are good at certain things, and therefore there's things we don't want to do. And so that's why we want partners, too. It's a really strategic choice on our part. And so, yeah, it takes a village here, and thank you, Andy, for that. And Andy, yeah, I want to ask you before I close my thing out. We're almost coming to a close. Anything that we didn't ask you? Anything you want to put in here before we hang up? Anything that was missed?
No. Today I can't help thinking about the Brexit, but we didn't get a chance to to talk about that today.
No politics on this show.
I'm just gonna say I'm happy that the spotlight is off of us for once.
Oh, okay.
So, looks like coffee break is coming to a close. I want to thank Andy for a great conversation. Thank you so much, Andy. And please join Rachel and me again, not next Friday, but the following Friday, the Friday after 4th of July, because next Friday is a holiday for us, and so I'm going to skip next week. And by the way, if you missed any part of today's conversation, come back and watch on our YouTube channel. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Is that right? Next Friday's a holiday?